The Church of Yeshua Radomir, the Jewish Savior, presents the Bible Code, The Gate to Heaven Notebook by Tony Jacobs. Does the Bible have a code? By now, most people believe that it does. What if I told you the Bible has a code that will set you free from the limitations of this world? People have found codes predicting the future and even sacred numbers in the Bible. The code that I found corresponds with science, nature, math, and the cosmos. I spent 10 years figuring out what this code really meant and what it was pointing to. Now I am presenting it to the world, for free. That's right. I believe all people should be free. I believe all limitations should be removed. To prove that I am free from the limitations of even money, to prove that this code works, I am presenting it to the world for free. If you're still wanting to hold on to limitations, excuses, and beliefs, then don't watch this video and don't listen to this audio book. This code will take you beyond belief, beyond limitations, and beyond all previous known thought that you ever had before. Are you ready for the journey? Here we go. Introduction. This notebook is jam-packed with essential information of the Bible Code, the Gate to Heaven. These gates, when visualized behind the heart, unlock you from limitations, barriers, and veils. When you go through these gates, you will be able to think, perceive, do, feel, and create in ways that you never even thought possible before. Imagine that someone has tied you up with an invisible rope, but the rope is an exact scientific way of working with your unconscious and the magnetic fields and other energies connected with the aforementioned. These gates unlock these manipulations that have been downloaded into the Earth's magnetic field for thousands of years. This is a how-to manual of my findings. The scientific and mathematical proofs are also in this book. Do not skip over any information in this book if you want to be able to go through the one gate to heaven. There are 7 gates. These 7 gates together make 7 points in an interdimensional space. From now on, we will not think on multi-dimensions. We will think of multiple created realities in a great sea of universes that are created by the one mind of God. Each bubble of reality is at a specific frequency and has a particular creation of its own kind. I call this model the Omniverse. The Bible Code, the Gate to Heaven, points the way to a particular reality we call heaven. If we are not bound by the laws of the third dimension of space, time, matter, and energy, then we can be wherever we want to be, whenever we want to be in our physical universe. Did you get that? You can be at any time, place, in the universe that you want to be. Time is an illusion. Why I brought together this information is because I grew up in a dysfunctional society. I grew up in a society where the solutions were simple, but people were too afraid, too scared, or just too limited, or too asleep to bring forth the simple solutions that I saw were right there in front of us. I didn't understand why people were like that. And now I do. After looking at these codes, I see why humanity has been in a prison for thousands of years. And these codes remove the prison from humanity. The locked 7 gates have been used in ancient construction, architecture, and ancient rituals for thousands of years. They have become part of the mass consciousness of humanity for us so that we may be able to focus on these things and lock our consciousness into a very limited reality. Once you understand what these gates are and how they are in your consciousness and how they have locked you into a very limited reality, which is the only reality you have ever known, then you can start to utilize the cracked codes from the Bible to set you free. Forward. Thomas Edison and Einstein both said brain waves, when properly focused, affect physical matter and even people's behavior. If brain waves affect physical matter, then they can also affect time, space, and energy. But to understand things better, let's go to the example of the double slit experiment in the 1950s. The double slit experiment in the 1950s was a major step forward in the birth of quantum physics. 2 electron guns were shooting electrons through 2 slits. In the back of the slits, there was detector paper. One side the scientists knew existed. The other side the scientists were not observing and did not know existed. On the side where the scientists were observing, the detector paper had little dots on it. And on the other side, where the scientists did not know about, the detector paper had a huge waveform. Hence, the waveform particle duality was born. The scientists' brain waves interlaced with the waves of potential that is an electron. That interlacing of consciousness created a lattice matrix of waves interlacing. It is this lattice matrix of waves interlacing with each other that is physical matter. We are the one creating the physical universe. Things are not physical until observed by consciousness. This graphic that I've been showing is a representation of what was happening in the double slit experiment. A wave of potential which was energy created by the gun. On one side, the scientist was observing and his brainwaves affecting the physical experiment. So on the right-hand side, you see the stick figure and little waves coming out of the head of the stick figure. And those waves are interlacing with the waves of potential that the electron gun are emitting. And then because those waves are interlacing with those waves, that is a lattice of frequencies of potential interlacing with each other that is the matrix that created the dots on the detector paper to create the illusion of physical matter, because all things are only physical once they are observed. This graph is a model representation of how physical matter and reality come into being. It is our consciousness observing that brings things into being. The universe is an infinite wave of potential. The universe is not physical until consciousness awareness observes it. It is the dance between the infinite wave of potential and our consciousness that creates materiality, that creates things to be physical. It is our perceptions, beliefs, values, morals, and ethics that qualifies, shapes, and manipulates things. The first gate is time. The archetype in mass consciousness is the clock and the sun. From the time of the sundials until now, this time lock has been downloaded into our brains. This time lock has become the dominant time reality. We will now examine how the matrix of time works by simple mathematics that even a third grader would understand. 60 seconds in a minute times 60 minutes in a day times 24 hours in a day equals 8,6,400 seconds in a day. Now the sun is 864,000 miles in diameter. This diameter in ancient planetary harmonics is a wavelength. This wavelength is also a frequency of the speed of light. So we have the speed of light divided by the diameter of the sun, which equals 2.156051 cycles per second. That is the frequency at which our entire existence is resonating through time, so we are all, as a human race, synced up into one time reality. Our brain waves resonate with this frequency through time as we focus on the clock, and it is even more so in ancient times when they used the sundial. What most people have never even thought of is that before the sundial, time did not exist. There was no consciousness giving things order or a linear existence. All consciousness was free from observing a set time reality. Consciousness was going to past and future events, as we would call it. There was no time. Without consciousness observing and interfacing brainwaves with the potential of reality, reality cannot exist. The picture on the next page illustrates the matrix of time, and this model is also a universal model for how the participation of consciousness creates the physical world. So here we have this graphic where we have a boy with his brainwaves going out, and though his brainwaves are in resonance with the clock, because that's what he's been focusing on, and his consciousness is interlacing with that of the clock, and the clock is also in resonance with the diameter wavelength of the sun. And it's this three-tiered interlacing of frequencies that creates the matrix of time. So Thomas Edison and Einstein both said brainwaves, just like radio waves, when properly focused, can affect physical matter and even other people's behavior. If brainwaves can affect physical matter, then they can also affect time. Time travel is possible. Time travel is possible through the power of the mind. Einstein also said that time, matter, and energy are also the same thing. So if brain waves can affect physical matter, they can also affect time as well. Much more on this will be covered in this notebook. So the moon is a very heavy hitter when it comes to a force on this earth. The moon affects tides, gravity, magnetic fields, and how many negative ions are in the atmosphere. Gravity is the most powerful force on the planet, and the moon affects gravity and in turn affects the tides. The moon has a diameter of 216,000 miles long. 36 times 6 equals 216. And 36 is directly connected to 666. And in that, if you go 1 plus 1 equals 2, and 2 plus 2 equals 4, and 3 plus 4 equals 7, and 4 plus 7 equals 11, all the way up to 36, you will end up with the final answer being 666. Shakespeare is coded esoteric knowledge with very Christian background. With a very Christian background. Actually, Shakespeare's plays quote the Elizabethan Bible thousands of times. In quoting when Romeo is looking at Juliet, "Oh, arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is sick and pale with grief, and none but fools do wear her." Christ in Hebrew comes out to a gematria number of 888. In gematria, each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a number. Christ written in Hebrew comes out to 888. The moon is 216,000 miles long, so I knew there must be a code to breaking the moon, so I plugged many numbers, and I found that 888 holds the key. 888 divided by 216 equals 4.1111, going on forever. The one's going on forever. This is an infinite number. Remember in the old days, back in the 90s, when you would dial 411? Information, please. What name or business are you looking for? There is a reason why, in modern history, we know 411 as information. It is because in secret societies and esoteric knowledge circles, they knew about this and the transmitting information to the brain mind of humanity. Remember Thomas Edison said brainwaves are just like radio waves and when properly focused can affect physical matter and even people's behavior? Now, I give more information about the moon. When NASA brought back moon rocks, they did an analysis. Everything the moon consists of on the surface is what you would make a spaceship out of on top for the spaceship to be able to withstand blows and bombardments from other space objects. Hard metals and sophisticated metallurgy is what the moon is made out of, at least on the surface. Ding ding! The moon is not natural. The moon is an artificially ancient-made whatchamacallit. I say whatchamacallit because we cannot be certain what it is, except when we do the math with the Bible on the moon, it shows us it's a giant antenna. David Icke, author of many books and whistleblower of many secrets of the matrix of Earth, said that the moon is a giant antenna and is transmitting information onto the magnetic grid of the Earth from Saturn. I have also found out that from various sources of ancient and modern data that the ancients of Earth worshipped Saturn. Saturn has a six-sided hexagon on each of its poles. Interesting, 666. So the ancient built architecture, technology, time, society, measure around Saturn. Say that again. So the ancients built architecture, technology, time, society, measure, all around Saturn. This type of box 666 third-dimensional consciousness got downloaded into the grid and mass consciousness of man a very long time ago. So a box has 6 sides, and a hexagram has 6 sides, or 6 lines. Combine 2 hexagrams together, and you get a box. Now let's turn this picture around for a better look. If you can break anything down into a number, and if you take a box and break it down into a number, it equals 666. If a box has all equal lines, then only an equilateral triangle will fit in the box. A triangle with equal lines has 60-degree angles. In numerology, the study of the meaning of the number 0 is the creative number. This is a perfect geometry model of the physical world according to numerology, geometry, and the Kabbalah. In this case, they all coincide and agree. So here, this picture of a box and a Star of David inside the box is the perfect model of the third-dimensional reality. And it equals 666, 6. So this is a very limited reality that has been downloaded into us in large part by the moon. And it is 666, 6. The moon is an antenna of sophisticated waves of energy made by ancient technology on Saturn and on the moon. The ancients worshipped Saturn and thereby created this whole show of limited reality of 666. Do you know that they have been doing it in modern day too? Here I give a few examples of architecture that is in sacred geometry lined up with stars. Washington, D.C. is rich with this. Here's an example. Here's a picture of an example of the sacred geometry designs of Washington, D.C. And these are actual roads that are in Washington, D.C. and how the roads are designed. That's right, the outlined portion of Washington, D.C. has a geometry matrix of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. There is an entire book written about the sacred geometry of Washington, D.C. This is the book, The Sacred Geometry of Washington, D.C., The Integrity and Power of the Original Design, Nicholas R. Mann. The Washington Monument downloads the magnetic field of light of Pleiades star cluster and Orion's belt into the magnetic field. The monument downloads this on Earth at 33-degree spiral of energy of light. For more information, read on into the Earth Gate, downloading Washington, D.C. with direct gate to heaven energy. So here we have this picture, and it shows the Washington Monument, and it shows the Great Needle, and then it shows at the observer's perspective that the God star right below Pleiades is at a 33-degree angle, and then right from that 33-degree angle is Orion's belt, those three stars. The three stars just to the right of the big white building. And so Orion's belt and Pleiades aligns. We see part of the ancient seal of Solomon as well. The Solomon key, the Vatican key, and the ancient Lalibela cross. All symbols of Orion's belt and Pleiades lined up. And so these pictures here show that the ancient and modern day religions also show Orion's belt and Pleiades. So the clavicle of Solomon, the key of Solomon, Vatican City, and the Lalibela cross are all designed to be in the same formation as Pleiades and Orion's belt lined up. And here is the original seal of Solomon, and the seal, this big cross, where it's an eight-sided cross that is representing Orion's belt, and then the stars around it representing Pleiades. So yes, the Vatican is built as the key to heaven. They built the Vatican City according to the alignment of Pleiades with Orion's belt. And if anybody knows anything about Egyptian lore, we know that the Egyptian pyramids are aligned with Orion's belt. So looking at the map of Egypt above, you see the alignment of the stars with the gate to heaven, and this is a secret technology. The stars, the sun, the moon, and the earth with the architecture download specific patterns, programs, beliefs, and thoughts and core flows into the magnetic field. These patterns and programs are designed to influence the reality of humanity. This type of technology has remained secret by the architects of this limited reality for a very long time now. Our brains work upon the energy of electromagnetic impulses. These monuments of Stonehenge, Washington, D.C., the Vatican, and the pyramids are major things in human history. These major structures in human history are in the mass consciousness. These archetypes in mass consciousness have been programmed to download specific programs into the grid. This is definitely programming the unconscious mind of the masses. So the question is, now that you know, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in a limited reality you have been fed your whole life? Or do you want to experiment and find out what is possible? I could show you hundreds of pictures about all the different Stonehengean monuments and pyramids and all these different ancient sites that are been built according to sacred geometry and sacred measure aligning with the stars to download programs into the magnetic grid to make a very limited reality. I could show you hundreds of pictures and hundreds of examples of all this stuff. But there's just not enough room in this book. There just isn't. So we're going to move on. Okay, so now you're probably buzzing about this and getting very excited. Let's get you grounded more into eternal life reality first before we move on into the unlocking gates that will unlock you from all of this. Okay, so first foundational principle is if you believe in the Judeo-Christian God, then you believe God is all-powerful, all-loving, and perfect and everywhere present. This means there is a perfect absolute power and love everywhere all the time. I have gone through these gates myself, and these gates remove from your consciousness the downloaded reality from the magnetic grid of the earth that keeps you in the limitations. The locks of limitation and suffering are broken by these gates. These gates also do so much more, but it is best to experience it for yourself and be set free. What I also mean is that our brain works upon electromagnetic energy called electromagnetic impulses. In the brain, the gravity field of the earth is much bigger than most of us realize, which is also electromagnetic in nature. Astrology is really the study of magnetic fields of Earth, Sun, planets, and stars, and how they affect the brain and in turn affect our behavior. You see where I'm getting at here? So how these programs affect us in the flesh? The many hundreds of architectures, rituals, and beliefs that have downloaded into the earth to affect humanity is too numerous for this book. So in conclusion, when going through these gates, it's like unlocking something inside the complete energy structure and consciousness of your being. You're going to a new place inside and outside of yourself. So this is from the false god that messed with our ancient ancestors, who were pure beings, and our ancient ancestors were pure beings and then changed into slaves, i.e. the serpent in the garden with the forbidden fruit of genetic manipulation. That's right. There were fallen angels who genetically messed with humanity and tried to turn us into slaves. But the Bible code, the gate to heaven, undoes all that. In conclusion, I found the Orion's Belt and Pleiades syndrome of the modern, Middle Age, and ancient history of humanity. I believe that an event happened that was a major part of what influenced humanity in connection to Orion's Belt. Many people believe anciently that Orion's Belt is the gate to heaven. I do not know if this is the truth for certain. The beings who came from Orion's Belt might be the false gods that messed with our ancient ancestors. Our ancestors were pure beings and then changed into slaves, i.e., the serpent in the garden with the forbidden fruit of genetic manipulation. Upon reading ancient texts, the gods or God anciently who created humanity genetically designed us to be slaves. This was so we would mine the gold for them so they could live thousands of years. They can live thousands of years from making the bread of life or the elixir of life from actual physical gold. That's why gold is worth so much money, is because only the elite are supposed to be able to have access to the vast quantities of gold so they can actually give it to their enslavers above them. So I have only given gates that will crack the magnetic field downloads and remove them. The code's gates are directly from the Bible. The rest is up for the individual to decide. Another explanation of these gates is ancients and modern architects. Another explanation of these gates is ancients and modern architects built things on earth with sacred measure and geometry. The sacred measure geometry is in alignment and resonance with the stars to influence a very limited reality on earth. This design is to lock us here into a very limited reality. The Bible code, the gate to heaven, unlocks this design off of your consciousness. They used written script with the stone before even building. This programmed the stone to put into the magnetic grid even more what they'd intended. The symbols and stars are in mass consciousness of man as well. So this program of mass consciousness of humanity is at the archetypal unconscious mind level. Now, I may have just lost you there, but I will explain here. So, like the pyramids, everybody knows, like the pyramids of Egypt. It's something in the mass consciousness of man that is a very important part of our history. It was a very powerful dynasty. Magic and mysteries and the occult are very much into Egypt. And those pyramids were built with sacred measure and sacred geometry with a very specific program aligning with Orion's belt. So there is some kind of program that is downloading into the magnetic field for thousands and thousands of years, and that program is part of the dominant matrix program in the magnetic field of the Earth, and the magnetic field of the Earth also affects brain waves, and so in conjunction with it being a archetype, something in the mass consciousness of man, then it is directly programming our unconscious mind. Okay, so that's how this manipulation is working. But you don't have to understand all this. I've just given all of the scientific and mathematical proofs behind the gates, but you don't have to understand it for it to work. You can just utilize the gates and it'll work for you whether you understand how it works or not. Okay, let us even surmise that when the heart feels that something should be or is, but does not see it in reality, it does exist. The eyes and senses don't experience it because the magnetic fields to experience it don't exist for that person, because of the matrix that has been built. That matrix is locking that out of the magnetic fields. Transparent reality archetypes like the sun and the clock keep your consciousness locked out of many things every day. Something you can't see could exist right in front of you that you have never seen before. You are unable to see it at this time because of where your consciousness is locked into. Your consciousness is locked because of the transparent reality archetypes such as the clock. Hence, those who carefully have read up to this point, or have listened up to this point, will see the subtle and yet very powerful influence of this artificial, hidden influence in plain sight. You will also be amazed at the manipulation upon humanity. The 7 gates in the Bible code unlock you from these influences and open you to more. The first real gate to start with is Earth. We start at the lowest point and go up. Okay, and this concludes the introduction and foreword of the book, and the next video we will be going to part 1 of the Bible code, The Gate to Heaven.